Hey, welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday, January 24th, and I'm Maggie Gray. We'll get to the Super Bowl matchup in just a moment, but we begin today with LeBron James, and he is not happy. Cavs lost for the 5th time in 7 games, and James put the entire organization on blast. On Monday, James said, "We need an effing playmaker. I'm not saying you can just go find one like you can go outside and see trees." I didn't say that. "I don't know what we got to offer. I just know me, personally, I don't got no time to waste." NBA writer Rohan Nadkami is here to discuss. Okay, James not pleased here. What does he want? Does he actually want the organization to go find a new player, or does he want his own teammates to start playing better?
I have to imagine it's a little bit of both. On one hand, I think LeBron in the offseason, I don't know if it's envy or what kind of emotion it is. When you see your biggest rival go out and add someone like Kevin Durant and you don't make any major moves, I'm sure in the back of his head he thought, that's not going to be enough. And now, for the most part, the Cavs have been playing really well so far this season. Kyrie's right at where he's always been in his career assist-wise. Part of me wonders if LeBron, I think maybe subtly calling out his teammates, saying, hey, guys, let's focus a little bit less on the scoring. We need to share the ball a little bit more offense. Having said that, LeBron is their best playmaker. If they're going to get more playmaking from within, it has to be him. I mean, you look at some of these names that have been attached to the Cavs. I think Forbes had a report today. It's Darren Williams, Rajon Rondo, Jameer Nelson. Those guys aren't going to move the needle.
They're not difference makers.
Exactly. And in a playoff series against the Warriors, you need top-end talent, and that's what Cleveland has, and that's what they have to ride, in these playoff series. So I'm a little confused where LeBron is coming from right now. I don't think he's making a lot of sense, and it's a little unfortunate because David Griffin, the GM there, has done a great job of filling out that roster, considering how he's been hamstrung by these large contracts.
Well, and also, is LeBron somehow hurting the organization by being so honest about their need for another playmaker? If David Griffin now calls a team and wants to make a trade, isn't he working at a place of disadvantage?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely strange in that regard. What's funny is the Cavs winning the title last year really kind of covered up how dysfunctional that regular season was. I mean, we're talking about LeBron sub-tweets, LeBron calling out his teammates, firing David Blatt. This is relatively mild compared to what they went through last season, so it's funny in that regard, but he's definitely putting the organization in a tough spot. I mean, I agree with you. If David Griffin calls someone, I mean, how is another GM not going to laugh at him? Like, hey, you're working for LeBron, or are you his general manager? So he's putting the team in a little bit of an awkward spot, which is why it wouldn't surprise me if, in a way, he's kind of calling out his own teammates and saying, it's really time to lock in and run this offense.
This may be one to satisfy all the sports talk radio callers out there, but for people who say, well, Carmelo Anthony is not happy in New York, he and LeBron James are good friends, could this ever work? Can it?
I think it could work in the sense that, LeBron went to play with Dwayne Wade, not really worrying about the basketball fit. I think he really wanted to play with a great player and someone he was close with. The issue there is, who do the Cavs trade if they want someone like Carmelo? Kevin Love's been out there in trade rumors before. I think winning the finals last year kind of cooled that off. I don't see a scenario in which Cleveland trades him, but if LeBron is serious about making moves, Love is really the only kind of chip they have. He's on a long-term contract. He's played a lot better this season, but it's just not realistic. I mean, it's not a video game. You can't just throw around guys like Kevin Love and pick up a bunch of pieces. I mean, the chemistry effects, and it's just too risky. So, I'd love to see Melo play with LeBron, but it's just unrealistic considering the contracts on Cleveland's roster.
Very interesting. We're certainly keeping our eye on LeBron James. Hopefully he's simmered down by now. Let's talk about the Clippers. Doc Rivers says that Blake Griffin is going to be returning, and the Clippers are in 4th place in the West despite the fact that Chris Paul is dealing with a hand injury. What kind of pressure is Blake under right now as he comes back after that 18-game absence?
I think the pressure on him will be kind of internal because he kind of needs this. He's had some injury issues the last few years, and I think he needs to prove that he can sustain a high level of play for a long time. One thing that works in his favor is a couple years ago, Chris went out. Him and DeAndre carried the team. I think our Ben Golliver posted this on Twitter recently, but the Clippers have a pretty solid net rating, even when Chris Paul sits, as long as Blake's on the court. So he knows how to play without Chris Paul. I mean, him, DeAndre, JJ Redick, they can still run that offense, at a very high level. So I think the pressure on him to perform will be internal. I think he needs to prove to himself that he can be healthy. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it, but it's very possible he's a free agent this summer. I think he is a free agent. I think it's Chris Paul who has the
early termination clause. So that's the elephant in the room with these two players. What do you expect the Clippers to look like in the near future?
To be very honest, if the Clippers don't make the conference finals this year, I think they're going to blow that team up to an extent. And even if they do make the conference finals and fall short of the title round, I personally have really enjoyed this Clippers team over the past few years. And it's a little unfortunate sometimes when we get wrapped up in this team has to win a championship to be successful. I mean, we're looking at a group of players that revitalized this franchise. It's sold for $2 billion or whatever it sold for. They did some great things for LA. It's unfortunate that they likely won't be a championship team, but I think they do have to break it up this summer. Their core is not getting any younger. I don't see how they can keep Paul, DeAndre, and Blake and realistically build around them. I think it's time that they'll have to go in a different direction.
Rohan, while the Warriors and the Cavs have become the best rivalry in the NBA, in the East, another rivalry slowly brewing between the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards. Last time they played, team had to be separated, got very chippy at the end. Now they're going to play again. John Wall said the team is going to wear black because this is a funeral. Should we care about this rivalry, right? Why does this one matter?
I think we should care about this rivalry. Again, people get too caught up in kind of Warriors and Cavs or bust. The Celtics and Wizards are two pretty entertaining Eastern Conference teams. Boston especially has a high ceiling. They're a team that's capable of making the conference finals this year if they can kind of shore up some of their defensive issues. Washington's been one of the hottest teams in the East for a month or so now. They're really getting it together. We're looking at two teams that could be the future of this conference to a degree. LeBron's on top right now. He might be for a couple years, but you don't know how long that's going to last necessarily. Two teams filled with young stars. I mean, Isaiah Thomas, John Wall, Bradley Beal, Al Horford. There's a lot of talent on the court when these two teams meet. It's the kind of rivalry that you could see these guys facing off in the playoffs 3 or 4 years in a row. And I think there's definitely something there. Appreciate the talent on the court and the fact that these two teams kind of represent the next wave of greatness in the East.
Rohan Nadkami, thank you so much. Fantastic
Absolutely.
job. Love the tie. Love the sneakers. Appreciate you. We're covering the Super Bowl 51 matchup from every possible angle, including special teams. And let's say hello to a man who kicked for 14 years in the NFL. He's now an analyst for CBS Sports. Jay Feely is my guest. Jay, everyone wants to talk about the quarterback and the coaching matchups, but let's start in your wheelhouse with the kicking. Stephen Gostkowski and Matt Bryant are the two kickers, and neither have missed a field goal this postseason. Which kicker would you be taking for the big game? I'm only going to let you pick one.
Well, for a long time, I would have picked Stephen Gostkowski. He's been the best kicker in the NFL over the last 3 years, but not this year. He struggled this year. He missed an extra point in the AFC Championship last year. It's really had a hangover effect on him. He missed another extra point in the AFC Championship this year as well against Pittsburgh. And he had a streak where there was a 10-game period where he missed a kick in 7 games, either an extra point or a field goal, and that's very much unlike him, and he struggled with his form all year. And so Matt Bryant has had the best year of his career. He's in his 40s. He's been kicking for a long time, but he was a Pro Bowler for the first time this year. He's done a great job. It'll be in an environment similar to the Georgia Dome, where it's a controlled environment, although I have grass in Houston. But I think he's done a great job kicking, and they have a guy in Matt Bosher who kicks off who does an excellent job as well.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's so much a mental game when you're kicking, but overall, which team would you give the advantage to with their special teams units?
Atlanta's had an excellent special teams unit for a long time. They have Weems, who's a great cover guy. They have weapons to be able to return the ball, create something. And New England has done a great job as well throughout the season on special teams outside of two factors. One, I talked about Gostkowski and his struggles, and then they fumbled the ball a lot on kickoff return. They had the rookie Jones, who they thought would come in and give him a spark on punt return and kickoff return, and he's had 5 fumbles this year, and they took the job away from him. And, they kind of given it to Amendola and Edelman and looked at different guys. Deion Lewis had the big punt return, or the kickoff return in the playoffs for the touchdown, but then he fumbled twice, and Belichick benched him and didn't have him in there last week. So you got to give the edge to Atlanta and the special teams.
We know that special teams can make or break a Super Bowl for a team. You were in Foxborough for the AFC Championship game, and it was hard to miss the "Where is Roger" chants bellowing from the crowd. Now, I know you played at Michigan with Tom Brady. You've known him for a long time, so he won't say it publicly. But is there added motivation because of the suspension from earlier this season?
I think when you've accomplished as much as Tom has, even before this year, he went to 6 Super Bowls and won 4. And when you've accomplished almost everything that you could accomplish, it's hard to get the motivation and the drive in the off season, especially in the off season, to do the things that you need to do to be ready, to go out there and to compete at the highest levels. And I think going through this and the way that he feels and I feel, and I think a lot of people do, that it was unjust and unfair and kind of arbitrary, that gave him the drive and the motivation in the offseason to go out there and to prepare himself and to be the very best that he could be. I don't know that it gives him necessarily any more motivation in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, but certainly in the offseason, I think it drove him to be great and to prove all the doubters wrong yet again.
Yeah, we can understand that. I want to talk about Dan Quinn. He has Super Bowl experience, just not as a head coach. He led the Seahawks defense that obliterated Peyton Manning and that high-powered Denver offense in Super Bowl 48. So Quinn may have the game plan, but does he have the players to stop Belichick and Brady?
Yeah, and it's difficult because you look at Pittsburgh and their defense have been playing really well, and they struggled. Houston had the #1 defense in the NFL. They played as well as they probably could play defensively. Tom Brady had his worst game of the year, and yet they still lost by 18 points. And I think that had more to do with Houston's offense and ineffectiveness on offense than it did, their defense who frustrated Brady. Here's the way that you win against Tom Brady. You have to get pressure up the middle. You have to not allow him to be comfortable in the pocket. Hit him again, knock him down. Make him get up time and time again. That's what Denver did last year in the AFC Championship. Continually put pressure on him and hit him. If he's in the pocket and he's comfortable and he knows where to go with the ball, you saw what he did to Pittsburgh. He just picked him apart, and they played way too much zone. I'm not sure if Atlanta has the weapons defensively to keep up with Tom Brady, but they certainly do offensively. And so I think their game plan is going to be to try to stop him 1 or 2 drives and then outscore him on offense.
That's a great breakdown. Jay, we know your first opportunity in the NFL was kicking for the Atlanta Falcons. So I imagine there's a little soft spot in your heart. So who are you picking in this game? Are you going to be picking with your heart, or what's going to factor in? Who do you think wins?
I do. I played my first 4 years in Atlanta, played for Arthur Blank when he became the owner, still have a friendship with him, and we've done stuff with our foundations together down in Haiti. So obviously, I'm happy for that organization and what they've accomplished. And it's been a struggle for them in the playoffs for a long time. And to get through and to get back to the Super Bowl is a great accomplishment for them. It's hard for me, though, to pick against Tom Brady in New England. I just can't do it. I haven't done it in any of the Super Bowls they've been in, even when they lost to the Giants twice and I played for the Giants, because he's so clutch. He knows how to perform. He's not overwhelmed by the situation. That team is disciplined. They're a well-oiled machine. It doesn't matter who's in there, who's playing, who they lose. They find a way to get it done. And I think Bill Belichick is very comfortable and confident in this team. We saw that in our meetings. And the thing that stuck out to me is that this is kind of the team that he wants. It doesn't have the star power. It doesn't have, outside of Tom Brady, you don't have a lot of guys that get a ton of recognition around the NFL as they're the best at their position. And that's what Belichick wants. He wants guys that are unsung, that do their job and do it exactly the way he wants it done. And they have that both offensively and defensively. That's an underrated defense in New England.
Yeah, and it's really a credit to Belichick that they've been doing it for a lot of the season without Rob Gronkowski. Let's talk about Jim Harbaugh and your alma mater, Michigan, for just a moment, Jay. They announced that the football team will be heading to Rome this spring for an educational experience and a few spring practices. What do you think of Harbaugh taking his players abroad? Did Lloyd Carr ever take you guys to Paris or something?
I think they need a kicking coach. I think they should bring me in as the kicking coach, and I'll travel over to Italy with them, and we'll get a couple practices in and then get to experience the whole Italian culture. I mean, honestly, he's a genius when it comes to marketing his school. He continually keeps Michigan in the national forefront. He continually keeps people talking about them. He knows how to make recruits take notice, and, he's winning that battle. And he's got an unlimited budget pretty much there at Michigan, which helps. But he's creative, and he finds a way to make people talk about him, and that's how you win the recruiting battle.
The NCAA says no more satellite camps. He says, fine, I won't go to Florida. I will go to Rome, Italy. They'll be running crossing routes at the Vatican. Jay Feely.
Probably have the Pope out there, sure.
And a visit with the Pope. Why not? Wouldn't put it past Harbaugh. Jay, really appreciate your insight, and thank you so much for joining us. You will see her on the sidelines of Super Bowl 51. But little did the public know that about 4 months ago, Erin Andrews got the phone call every person dreads. She is one of the most recognizable faces in sports broadcasting. But little did the public know that Erin Andrews was diagnosed with cervical cancer in September of 2016. Andrews is now cancer-free, and she spoke with Emily Kaplan of the MMQB.com, and Emily joins me now. Emily, from the outside, you couldn't tell that anything was amiss, let alone the fact that Andrews was battling cancer. How did she fight this disease and keep working?
Yeah, I think when people read the story, they're going to be shocked that she worked despite having 2 procedures for cancer. But when Erin and I talked over the summer, even before her diagnosis, she stressed so many times how important it was for her to return to normalcy. And normalcy for her is being on the sidelines and being with Joe and Troy and the crew and football. So even as life threw her another curveball, I believe it was important for her to do what she loves, do what is routine, and focus on the things that she could control.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the ultimate distraction in some ways. I'm sure that she appreciated that at the time. And thankfully, she could avoid chemo, she could avoid radiation, and now she's cancer-free. But what have doctors told her about her future?
Yeah, it's good news from doctors. Obviously, cancer is unpredictable, but they believe after that second procedure in November that they got all of the cancer out. So she'll have to go for regular checkups, but for now, they're cautiously optimistic that she's in the clear.
Oh, that's great. Now, not only did Erin battle cancer, but it wasn't long after she won her civil case against her stalker. In what ways is she still living to what happened to her nearly a decade ago?
She lives with it every day. I mean, just as the story suggests, there's a pain you cannot see. When she's in front of the camera or when she's on the sideline, she's always going to wonder, has the person I'm speaking to, the viewer, have they seen me naked? And that's an awful feeling. I mean, her privacy has been violated in a way that will never be able to be restored. But she's also learned that she doesn't have to play the role of the perfect sideline reporter. She showed the world that she's vulnerable and to let us see some deep emotional scars, that she's a real human being, not just a television personality. And I think that's such a strong message to send to women, that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, it is a great message. How has both cancer and her stalker situation, how has that shaped her view of the future?
Like any traumatic event, I think that you reevaluate your relationships, what you enjoy doing in life, your attitude. But for me, what I found inspiring is that she's decided that she wants to be an advocate for cybercrimes and video voyeurism. And this is twofold. I think she's setting a model for victims of these kind of crimes, that not only can you pursue, who did this to you in court, you should, and it's okay. And we're destigmatizing victims of this type of cyber and emotional hacking. But also, technology is moving so much faster than our laws, and there's so many loopholes where these cases fall through. So Erin wants to be a leading advocate to change laws. She wants to stand in front of Congress and, make sure that we can make change. And she's already had some conversations with lawmakers, and I fully expect her to be very vocal about this issue over the next couple of years.
That's a fantastic cause for her to be taking up, and I'm sure the sports world would be incredibly supportive of her endeavors in that area. Emily Kaplan, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maggie.
Turning now to a story that is as complicated as it is tragic. Kevin Turner, the former Alabama star who played 8 years in the NFL, died last spring from complications due to ALS. Tonight on Real Sports, reporter John Frankel explores Kevin Turner's life and the conflicts that come when football gives you so much, yet it comes at such a steep price. John Frankel is here with me now. John, there are still skeptics out there who don't believe there is a connection between football and ALS. What will they learn after seeing this piece?
Well, there's a part of the interview that is actually not in the piece, so I might add to it here. When we interviewed Dr. Ann McKee from Boston University, who has studied many of these players' brains after they've died, including Kevin Turner's, and her point is this: America has got to come to grips with this, and if they don't, a lot of people are going to suffer until then.
It's not just America. It's within Kevin's own family because his son, Nolan, is a freshman at Clemson, a full scholarship on the football team. They just won a national championship. But how much danger is Nolan in?
Dr. McKee would say that she thinks he's in danger. One, because of ALS, there is a genetic connection. It is more likely that he might end up getting ALS. It's certainly not a certainty. But as far as just brain damage, she thinks that this guy Nolan is going to be faced with some serious decisions. If he doesn't get out of the game, and that is a decision unto itself, that life might be more complicated for him down the road.
How much of a stranglehold does football have on this country?
I think it's huge. I mean, I can remember in the course of shooting with Kevin, when he decided for a season that he didn't want the boys to play football, he was actually concerned about how people in his community in Alabama, in Birmingham, would react. And he was afraid that some of them would say, oh, this is just a knee-jerk reaction because you're in pain, you're suffering from ALS, you're not looking at the big picture. I think people are afraid to be told. You know, they actually don't want to hear from the Kevin Turners or the Troy Aikmans or the Bo Jacksons who are saying, not for me, and if I knew what I knew then, you know, if I knew now, what I know now, if I knew it then, I wouldn't have done it.
So what impact do you hope that this piece has? And by telling Kevin's story and now even the conflicts that Nolan and his family are dealing with in terms of their love and sort of regret about football?
You know, it's one of those things that I think we wrestle with in putting together a story like this. I was concerned that we didn't have an agenda and we weren't preaching to people and saying, look, take away from this. Kevin, however, it was important for him that his story be told and that his legacy have something to it with some real gravitas. And I think for him that was raising awareness of ALS, raising awareness of the connections between head trauma and ALS, and certainly the price that one pays to play this game. And I'm afraid that too often the people that go to the games on Sundays and Mondays and almost every other day of the week right now, how would they react if they saw NFL players like Kevin Turner sitting in a wheelchair outside of a stadium as people are going in on a Sunday afternoon? And you know, a guy saying, look at me, you cheered for me years ago, but now am I just a forgotten soul? And I think Kevin loved the game. He didn't regret playing it. He was conflicted about his own boys playing the game. He wanted to make it safer. He doesn't want to see the game go away, but I think he wants everybody to be fully aware of what some of the consequences potentially are.
The powers that be in the NFL and college football will claim that the game is safer now than it has ever been. If Kevin Turner was playing now, would he still be alive? Would he have gotten ALS? I don't know enough about the science as to whether Kevin would have gotten ALS. I think that Dr. McKee would say that when you consider this small sample of guys in the NFL, there are a good number of guys who are going to be walking around with CTE, that's inevitable. I'd still debate whether the game is safer today for this reason. You still see helmet-to-helmet hits every single game that I've watched. I don't think the penalties are strong enough in order to change the culture. I think guys should be kicked out of the game and probably have to sit the next game. And if it continues, then the coach, you know, go back to Bounty Gate and Sean Payton, and the coach has to pay the consequences as well. But I also think that if you're a 15, 18-year-old kid, you know, yes, it was bad enough to be sent back into a game after a concussion 20 years ago or when Kevin played. But now a kid knows the consequences of raising his hand and saying, I'm hurting. And no kid wants to sit down for a week or 3 weeks or miss the whole season. So I would say that kids are actually more reluctant to say, I'm hurting. Yeah. Oh, gosh, that's tough to hear. You know, Kevin was a very outspoken advocate for the class action lawsuit that has now been settled with the NFL. Ironically, the day after the Super Bowl this year is when players can apply for the program where hopefully they'll get some services and potentially some relief from that class action lawsuit. If Kevin could sit down with those powers that be in the NFL, what do you think he would want to tell them?
I think he would say that the culture and the mindset really has to change, that even this idea that you've created these little tents on the sidelines and you want to go through your concussion protocol in private, I don't know medically, maybe it needs to be done that way, but what are you hiding from? You know, are you telling the player, look, can you see my fingers? Can you do that? All right, you're good to go back in. I mean, I've heard from people that are tied into NFL teams, and a lot of them have said the protocol is still not good enough and where it should be. So I think Kevin would say, you need to take this seriously. And the way you treated my knee and you sent me to the best doctors when he blew out his knee when he was playing for the Eagles, that's the way you got to treat my brain.
Yeah, and that seems like that should be a given, but as we know, unfortunately, it is not. John, it's a tremendous piece, an accomplishment. You followed Kevin for years, and just to see his battle and now to see his kids, it is just heartbreaking, but fantastic job telling his story.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you. That's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of SI Now. We will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern with 15-time WWE champion John Cena and Olympic gold medalist and, of course, a member of the Final Five, Laurie Hernandez. Until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.